Hi, this discussion board post is going to be similar into the third one, in the sense that we're going to pause in the beginning, have you guys do initial posts. I'm going to clarify a couple more things, and then you'll do follow-up responses to other people's response. So go ahead, pull up discussion base number 4, I say discussion, is what you'll see on the screen. Okay, so in this section, Graf and Birkenstein talk about, so we have just come from part 1 where we're all about you need to, before you enter the conversation, you need to synthesize what scholars are saying. You can't just enter in and say, this is what I think about this issue and why, because this is my experience. We need to recognize that these conversations within academia have been going on for several decades, right? So part 1, as we talked about, deals with synthesizing what they say, putting those scholars into conversation together, and then now we're here, right? And so they say after we've done that, it's your turn to talk, essentially. This is where you enter the conversation. They say that they give us 3 major ways of responding: agreeing, disagreeing, and then a combination of both. And they say that in writing your response, remember you're responding to others. So I'd like you to pause and take a second to speculate what exactly is it that means. What do you think it means to respond to what they have said in your responses? What would that actually look like for you? Because I think that's something that when we read, we're like, yeah, that makes sense. But then when it gets to the practicality, it's kind of like, well, what does it actually look like? So I want to take some time to first think about what that actually looks like. Have you guys formate that in your own response, and then share a little bit, what has your experience in academic writing looked like at this part when you've been asked to write the I say section. So some people are like, never. I've been told you're not allowed to use I'm not allowed to say me, take out personal pronouns. This is not about the person's experience. This is about like a research paper, right? So if that was your experience, you're going to be talking about that. Or maybe you've been told some sort of combination of you're allowed to use or you're allowed to use personal experience. However, you're also going to be sharing that in your initial response. Okay, so go ahead, take a second and respond to that. Okay, so I want to say a little bit about these 4 points. These are after that first thing I just said. These are like the other things I'm like, I want to make sure that they have a good understanding of this before we move on. So the next thing is talking about what I just mentioned about how the 3 main ways of responding, all right? They state that the 3 ways are the writer can agree with those he or she is responding to, disagree with them, or present some combination of both agreeing and disagreeing. However, no matter what your response is, you want to do more than just agree or disagree. Rather, you want to push the conversation forward. So what does that look like, right? Academically speaking, they're saying they don't want you just to say, I agree with them, I disagree with them, or both, and that's it. They want you to look at things like, okay, like it's definitely established, I mostly agree with them, or I mostly disagree, or it's a combo, but then move to think, what did they not say? The whole point of you entering the conversation is to create new knowledge. That's the whole point of everybody publishing in these academic journals. So what new knowledge are you going to contribute in your I mostly agree stance, or whatever stance you take? How to extend the conversation, you're thinking about things like I said, what do they fail to take into account? For a field or person who cares about this issue, what other questions are important to consider? What other facts do we need to shed more light on or give more attention to? So all of these components get at helping you extend the conversation and just not saying me too. Well, this is something that may be new for some people when it comes to academic writing. This is something that we know socially. Think about it, if there's like a group of your friends or people that you're entering into, they're deep in conversation, you wouldn't just interrupt and say like, You hear one word, they're talking about like war. Be like, this is my stance on war, like pros, cons, blah, blah, blah. Like, think about how that would turn out. It's very awkward. That's not what you are supposed to do. And just like that's true in social situations, you're not supposed to do that academically, right? Within the university. And you would think that's kind of a given, but like we kind of talked about last week, we get here because high schools train students to say, like, pick a pro-con issue, enter in, say what you want to say, and then find sources that support what you want to say. And so that's the exact opposite of the kind of writing that colleges and disciplines expect students to do. Before you enter in saying, this is what I think about this, you need to listen in, right? Figure out what it is people are saying. And then even in your response, you're recognizing that what you have to say is in response to other people, right? Okay, and so then the last three things I want to hit on is the importance in distinguishing who's talking. This, I feel like when you read that section, it makes sense, and a lot of people probably like, doesn't really apply to me, but it's actually kind of easy to do. Students often leave that part out of their writing because they're not confused who's talking. They're like, no, this is what I think, or this is what the scholar thinks. But they forget those signaling phrases or verbs that are very helpful. So go ahead and look at the templates for that. Utilize those as much as you like. But without that, the reader doesn't know, is this the they say section? Is this the I say section? Are you arguing what they're arguing? Or are you just telling me what they're saying? Right? So this can be very muddled for the reader, and it works against the writer because they think they're arguing their point, answering the research question, but really the whole paper, the reader's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So this is something that is good to worry about, like towards the end, like kind of like a checklist, or to do while you're composing. Different styles for different writers. Then planting a naysayer into your text. This prevents you from coming off like closed-minded, not acting like, well, obviously this is the only approach. Other ideas aren't even significant to even address, right? So it allows you to address, which allows you to expand what you're already saying, gives you more stuff to talk about, and it addresses any potential qualms that the readers might have before getting on board with what you're arguing, essentially. And then the last thing, what we've been talking about, the so what question / who cares question. So first, the who cares question is much easier to do and understand. It literally means who cares about this, right? Like what group of people would find these articles interesting. For example, a lot of you guys will be doing educators or psychologists or teachers within like this particular discipline, right? So that's something you'll want to signal in your writing, which can be done very easy when you're saying this is what this article has to talk about, right? Where are they from? Where is this scholar? What discipline are they from? And then the so what question gets at why is this even worth looking at? So your research questions need to be more than just interesting, right? So that's why I had you guys do the so what question as you guys did the proposal, because it can't just be like, hey, I think it's interesting to look at this. Like when you get to research papers within college, they're all about, like we said, adding new information. So what's to be gained by looking at your research question? And so that, as you see on the prompt, you're going to address that in a couple sentences in your introduction, and then your concluding paragraph is unpacking that so what question. So the so what who cares question will be more clear when we read the actual chapter. It's one of the last chapters of the book. Okay, so go ahead, post any questions, or if everything makes sense at this point, no questions, post follow-up responses to other people's initial response. All right.